Perfect.
Awesome. Just want to make sure you were connected there, Scott. You guys can leave yourself unmuted so there's not background noise, but Stephanie is going to kind of do her presentation. If you have questions, I like the dialogue back and forth, unless Stephanie, you think it's going to break your rhythm too much.
Nope.
But if you have a question while she's on the topic, my opinion is chime in, and while we're talking about it, maybe she can go into a little bit more depth if you have that question. Otherwise, put it in the chat, make some notes. I'm super stoked to have Stephanie here. She's been to our office a few times, but never really presented. So I'm going to let Eric kind of introduce her and we'll get started.
Yes. So I'm super excited too. That's a long time in coming. Steph's been a part of our local team for quite a bit, just helping us out. And just a little background, you know, I know you guys know that I've been in the business 17 years. I've used a lot of different people coming in out of my teams. You know, I've used different lenders, I've used different inspectors, staging companies, but once I started using Stephanie, she's the only escrow officer that I use. I just love the way, you know, the way she works. She's very thorough, and she works too hard. She works too many hours. She's just very, very dedicated to her people, which I love. So it's great to have really good team members on your side. And you know, most escrow officers are going to do a good job when it's easy, right? When there's no problems, that's, you know, it's smooth sailing for all of us that know how to do our jobs. But it's when things get tough that sometimes you have issues. I always think of this one, probably as a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. Steph and I had one. It was a past client of mine that was selling a house, and they came back to me to sell their house and buy a new home. And it was about 9 years since I sold their house. And in that time, they had a bankruptcy, but also had equity in their home. They managed to keep their home through their bankruptcy, and they were in a position where they're ready to buy again. But unfortunately, their attorney did not get a lot of the liens removed from their property. And there's no way we could have closed on it. And my poor clients were absolutely, I had no clue of what to do, and terrified, and their attorney wasn't answering their calls back because it had been a few years back. And I tell you, Stephanie just went above and beyond and went to worked with my clients and got everything removed. And some of them were really challenging. And I was just super impressed with just that extra effort that she did. So I'm just really appreciative of Stephanie and what she does. She does a great job for me. And like I said, more than just the escrow piece, she does a lot of extra things for me. And she's going to talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit, how she helps me out. But Stephanie, welcome. Glad you could help us out. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for letting me present today. Just a little background about me. I started in the business maybe 15 years ago, worked my way up as a receptionist to an assistant, and then got licensed about 6 years ago. So I feel like I know the ins and outs of the industry. I know from a file from beginning to the end, from clearing to payoffs to all that. So just chime in if you have any questions during this presentation. Happy to answer anything you may have. I invited my title officer, Scott Green. He has 34 years in the business of doing title searches, and his experience is just phenomenal. He just knows a lot. So thanks for coming, Scott.
Sure, you bet.
So I just kind of wanted to go over just kind of understanding title and escrow and how it relates to you, your buyers, your sellers, just kind of an overview of title and what we kind of do. So we'll go over the basics of titles, title searches, what is important to your sellers, and then also for buyers. And then we'll kind of discuss just the 10 common title problems that we see as escrow officers and being in the title industry. And then just to follow up, we'll just go over how we can help you to create new business, what kind of leads I can provide for you, going over some farms, labels, things like that. So let's get started. So basics of title. A title search is usually done when you get a listing or you get an offer accepted on a contract. So that is when you basically go into your escrow officer and order a title search. Has anyone had any issues with a title report coming back to you from your escrow officer? Either you see liens or judgments on either side of the parties. Old owners will pop up as vested that isn't even vested in your current owners. Has anyone had any issues of that?
I've seen it for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So it does happen. Usually there's errors in title, but we'll go over that in a little bit. But we search multiple sources. So we check all the deeds, we back deed, we check county records. We also check for tax liens, federal IRS liens, state liens. We show divorces. Sometimes there's divorce case where one property, the wife will deed off in the divorce, but there's certain verbiage in the deed that needs to state that the wife is actually giving up her equity. So that's an issue we run into. We check against financial judgments, and then just things that attach to the property. So we just search for title searches. We just search public records to determine who is the actual owner of the property. And then we find out what liens and judgments are showing on the property. So this is an extensive search that Scott does actually. So we check both buyers, sellers, what's been recorded on the property. So just a clean title is required to process through to finalize the transaction. So we clear up all that. So it's really important to get your escrow officer so they can start the search as soon as you get that listing, just in case there's certain issues that do come up that are not expected, that you think, oh, this is my seller, but actually someone else is showing, or my seller, or even a prior owner has a lien that's still showing up on the property. Those are things that we need to take care of. And sometimes they take quite a bit of time. So who performs the title search and when is it done? So usually when you open up your escrow with your escrow officer, we begin the work on the title search. What's the average time that you guys see with your PR coming back to you guys? I think it's standard that everyone's 24 to 48 hours. But, you know, depending on the property, Scott can attest, if it's meets and bounds, those searches do take a lot longer. If it's in a subdivision, that might be a little easier for the searches. Names, definitely names with common names like last name Smith or Jones or or Jensen. Those are difficult names to search because there are so many of them. So if you're listing a home with one of those names, it's really helpful to give middle initials, last four of socials, dates of birth, just so the search is a little easier for the person that's actually searching the property. Can you do a title search on your own? Well, you could. I don't know that you'd want to spend that much time on it. Like I said, it does take a lot of going through lots of documents and searches with the county, searches with Exchange, which is a search for judgment checks on buyers and sellers, divorces, we search all of that. So it is quite lengthy, but it can be done. What you would need is a legal description. So your tax parcel ID number would generally help you. You can go to your county recorder's office and they have public access to give to you to manually look up that chain of title. So has anyone ever requested an abstract on a property before? Okay.
Yeah.
So it just goes over the chain of title. Then you can see what's been recorded on the property, the previous owners, all the way back to whenever. So the staff cannot give legal advice. So if you did happen to search a property on your own, no one can actually give you any advice or their interpretation of what is being shown on the property or not. And there's a possibility of liens that you don't know about that could show up that wouldn't be on your own search. So it's definitely worthwhile to have a title company help you with that, because that's what title insurance actually does. It protects your buyer or seller. So why are title searches important for sellers? So you must have marketable title. So marketable title is just states that there's no liens or defects on the property, that the property is sellable. There could be errors on title. We've seen errors on legal descriptions, errors on who actually owns the property, or errors in spellings of names of the owners on property. There could be defects on title, so any liens, judgments, and even wild deeds. Does anyone know what a wild deed is? So a wild deed would be someone that sold the property, but then didn't record the deed transferring the title to that person's name. So just kind of things like that can pop up in title searches, which can get sometimes confusing and a lot of work to work through.
Wild deed is also, for instance, if somebody records a deed and puts the wrong legal description on that deed, it can cloud title on your property.
So why are title and searches important for buyers? You want to know who the true owner is. You want to ensure that all liens are discovered, so anything that is owing on that property doesn't transfer to your new buyer. Judgments, like I just said, judgments can pass to the new owner, which can be difficult to get those removed. Us as a title company, that would be a claim on title insurance, and we would pay that claim. And then it also gives your buyer protection after closing. Does anyone have any questions so far?
I don't really have a question, but I have a comment along these lines that it's important to have these done. But I bought a property, remodeled it, flipped it, sold it to a buy and hold type landlord investor. And he hadn't even made his first payment yet, and the house went into default. He received a notice of default in the mail. There was an owner, not that I bought it from, somebody even previous back, I don't even remember, it was 2 or 3 owners back, that claimed they had a $120,000 trust deed that never got paid off.
Oh, wow.
So what was cool about that though, is all I had to do is make one phone call to my title. Right? And it wasn't my buyers freaking out. What do I do? What do I do?
Right.
You receive title insurance to protect you from this event. So never heard about it again. Somebody down the line, maybe another title company that missed that might have written a big check, but our client was protected from the past because of the title insurance policy.
We had the same thing happen to us.
Right.
We had the same thing happen to the house we bought. Several tax liens came onto the property after we purchased it, and we are saved from those tax liens because of our title insurance.
Right. Tax liens are a big one. Yeah, we had one a few months ago where the tax liens didn't pull up on the search, but we ended up paying them just to protect those buyers. So that's what your title insurance does for you. So for sellers, and I probably should have put this slide up before, usually they have a mortgage on the property. Some payoffs do take quite some time to order, just depending on what kind of payoff it is. Some lenders take up to 7 days. So me as an escrow officer, I like to order those. So if you need an estimated closing disclosure or estimated settlement statement, I can go through and give you real figures, because usually most sellers don't, they'll give you their payoff off of their principal balance, and they don't realize that there's other fees involved with payoffs. So if they want an accurate figure, I like to order those just so I have them. And sometimes they charge you like maybe a $10 fax fee is all to get those, but you only have to update it once or twice. So it's minimal with that. And like I said before, with names, sorry, I can't get my next slide to go. Stuck. So also what's helpful with that is payoff statements that they receive. It gives us all the contact information, their loan number, the number for the mortgage company to call and get those payoffs. You also want to make sure that if you do have a lengthy payoff company that takes a while to get those payoffs, that you're aware of your closing date. So there's not a holdup on closing or holding funds for the seller in escrow to make sure we have enough funds to make that payoff for them. And then also make sure your seller is making the minimum payments. You want to avoid all late fees as possible. You don't want any 30 days late or anything, even though, you know, if you close the 15th of the month, and usually your payment's the 15th, but then, you know, I always recommend that they stay on the safe side and make a payment, just in case if closing gets delayed or funding gets delayed by a few days, then they're not late and they always get that money back from their escrows too. So, and then lender approval for payoff amount changes, just with refis and stuff. And then communication is key. So you always want to stay in touch, the three of you, your seller, your buyer, your escrow officer, and your lender. Just making sure that, you know, everyone's aware, you're all on the same page. You send everyone the addendums that come in, if there's anything changing dates or sales price or things like that, just so that everyone's aware. And then Scott and I can kind of go over this. So encumbrances, Scott, if you want to take it on that one.
Well, encumbrances or anything that could be held against a property, be it a deed of trust, liens of any kind, tax lien, judgments, even the things that are filed against it on the state construction registry. And that's something that most people actually wouldn't have access to. You have to have an account with them to get onto their system. So we go through numerous systems to search for anything that can be held against the property and make sure that they are clean, that there are no liens or, as we say, encumbrances that can be held against the property without your prior knowledge before you purchase a property, sell a property, or involved in a transaction.
Thank you. And then exceptions to title, that just goes over like the search results, and then what title identifies that could interfere with the sale of that property. It's called an exception to title. The 10 most common title problems we see: errors in public record. The error is human. That can be typographical errors, either in the legal description or names of who the vested owner is. Unknown liens, like we've talked about. We do numerous searches, we call them date downs, before we fund and record on a property, just to make sure no new liens have come up. We've had that where that does happen, and then it's a mad dash to hurry and get a payoff and make sure that that lien won't be recorded against the property at the time of funding. Illegal deeds. So this would just be an illegal person or a minor or a person of unsound mind that has signed a deed. Those can be fought in court. So just be aware of those. Us as notaries, we have to make sure, you know, when we check IDs or if we're having a conversation with someone, that that person is of sound mind. Missing heirs. If there's a will and they leave it to the heir and nobody can find that heir, then technically that could be an issue with transferring of title, because that deceased person did leave the title to their heir. Forgeries. This does happen. I haven't seen it often, but it does happen. Someone can sign a deed and have misidentification or using someone else's ID. saying that they're selling the property to, and then they'll deed it to themselves. So forgeries do happen. Undiscovered encumbrances, so just again, with liens or judgments, something that's last to pull up on. Unknown easements. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with the commitment and the easements that show up on title. A lot of them are for Rocky Mountain Power companies have easements on your property, things like that. Boundary and survey disputes. So I'll give you a story. My sister-in-law sold her house. It was in a newer neighborhood, and she built a fence on it, and she just kind of guessed her boundary line, and she was off by about 6 inches in one of the back corners for about probably about 5 feet or so. And so the builder that was building a house behind them had their survey come out, and they had to move their fence, but she already sold her house. So then it files a claim on title. So us as the title company actually paid to have her fence moved. So things like that can happen. And then an undiscovered will. So if someone is deceased and they leave their property in their will to someone else, and then all of a sudden that will comes up, that can be an actual huge title problem.
Hey, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I have a question. It kind of has to do with number 4,
Okay.
missing heirs. I had a previous client call me just yesterday, and he's got a friend whose husband passed away, and she lives in the home. She's been with him for a long time. They've owned the home for a long time, but she was never on title. It was just in his name, and he passed away. And so what would be the process then for going about that, where she is kind of an heir, she's his wife, he passed away, he owned the house. Is that where we get a probate attorney involved, or is that something?
So there's a little more that you'd have to kind of know. So on title, would he be a married man? Did they acquire the property together as a married couple and she was just never on title? Things like that you would have to kind of check on.
From what I understand, I think he owned the house first before they got married.
Okay. Scott, do you know the answer to that one?
Well, that one you're probably going to be actually going into the courts. Did he have children, or just married to her?
There are children. I just got the phone call yesterday, so I haven't had time to dive into it, but nobody is interested in the house but her. She obviously doesn't want to lose the house and have to move. And there's equity in the home, but none of the kids, are helping her, even trying to figure out how to get it in her name or anything.
Well, there's 2 ways to handle it. You can go through probate, in which case you do need a probate attorney, and have that go through probate, which, if he died with a will or without a will, that makes a difference as well. Another way you could go is the determination of heirs. If there's only a couple of kids, not a lot of grandkids or anything like that, that makes it easier. Sometimes it's a lot simpler process. And through that process, everyone who is an heir, they file the form determination of heirs with the court, stating these are the heirs that he had when he died. He died intestate or without a will. And so they would have to have each of those heirs then execute a deed removing themselves from title. So that's one of the easier ways to go. Probate can take a little longer, be a little more involved, but it depends on the circumstances whether they can do that or not.
Okay, good.
And some people hear the word probate and it scares them. It's pretty slick. Those probate attorneys know what they're doing. It can take up to a few weeks, 6 weeks or so, but it's not as scary as everyone thinks it is. And then false impersonation of a previous owner. So if you go in and sign a deed and you're falsifying that you're that previous owner and that you didn't sign that deed, that can be a huge title issue as well. So that's kind of it on the 10 common title problems. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Steph, I got a question. What happens when a claim comes back, say after closing,
Mm-hmm.
and it does it get attached to that maybe it's on the previous owner, but that lien gets attached to the property because of a debt that previous owner has? How is it even possible for that lien to get put on that property, or is that part of what title insurance protects the new owner from?
Yeah, that is part of what title insurance protects you from. So in order to be a lien on property, if they have a judgment against a previous owner, since 2002, it needs to be recorded with the county recorder as well. And they're only good for 8 years, unless it's a federal or state judgment, that's 20 years. So if it's recorded against the owner, filed with the courts prior to the owner coming out of title, the one that has the judgment, then it will attach to the property. And it can be an issue for the new owner in that respect. And title insurance should cover you for that as well. So, I mean, it becomes a problem for the new owner only in the aspect that they can hold it against the property's title. But if you have title insurance, then you're covered, and the title company pays that, and then they have to go after the previous owner.
So if a previous owner, let's say, installed a fence a year before they sold it,
Right.
and he just either forgot to pay it, or the installer billed him a couple times and it's kind of fell through the cracks, and then they sell the house, and then that contractor is doing his taxes or something, says, I never got paid on that. I'm going to go put a lien on that property that previous seller doesn't even own anymore, because
Okay.
that's his fence. So how does that protect the new buyer?
Okay, well, that would go under the state construction registry, and they have certain rules they have to follow in order for that to become a lien on the property. Once they file with the state construction registry, that gives effective notice that they're owed that money. Now, if they did not file it, they have a certain amount of time from the point where they begin construction to the point they can finish construction, that they have to file their lien against the property or the notice of construction, or else they kind of lose out basically on their chance to file against that property. So if he finished the fence last year, he can't go in and file it now saying, I forgot to pay or bill.
Okay.
They're just kind of up the creek there.
Okay.
Hey, Scott, isn't that time frame only 90 days from completed project?
Yeah, and it's unfortunately, it seems like it's a moving target sometimes because they've changed it so many times, but I believe it's 90 days right now.
Perfect.
Any other questions before we move on?
Just on some of the other issues, what do you think is the most common issue that you see that other escrow officers miss? Like, because you get to see both sides of it, right? Like, if you have a newer escrow agent or somebody makes a mistake, what's the most common ones that pop up for you that you notice?
Oh, I don't want to speak ill of other escrow officers, but common things that get missed. If you're delayed in ordering payoffs or judgments, ORS liens take a while to receive those back. Really, you just need to stay on top of the file. Make sure that you as an agent also, if you have any questions regarding your title commitment, that you reach out to your title or your escrow officer and ask them, hey, I'm just confused. Can you go over this? Is there anything we need to worry about? Does everything look good? Just to make sure that on everybody's end that it's a transaction that's not going to be held up come the day of closing.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I work with a new buyer, I always tell them it is absolutely imperative that you get everything that lender requests you quick.
Right.
Because even if we have 30, 35 days to closing, whatever that time frame is, we might have only 2 or 3 days to get that information back to the lender to stay on schedule. So I always tell my buyers, stay on top of whatever the lender says. But I have to say that I haven't been that adamant when I'm working with a seller to say, hey, when Stephanie calls you and she needs payoffs, you get that to her immediately, because that can hold up our process too, and make sure that we're staying on schedule. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm not as adamant with that on title on seller.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, some payoff lenders will require an authorization. They won't accept a digitally signed authorization, and they have to actually wet sign an authorization for me to obtain those payoffs. So just again, once you know, me or their lender reach out to them, if they're on it, it makes the process so much smoother.
That's great.
So as a escrow officer, some things I can help you with your business. I do get notice of default lists. These are updated every few days, once a week usually. But as you can see, this is fairly recent from just a few days ago, but that was the newest list for that day. So if anyone is interested in that, please feel free to reach out to me. You can start that process, prospect with that seller before they actually have to do a default or a foreclosure on their property. That's an option for you guys. Farming neighborhoods. Does anyone currently farm any neighborhoods?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, you can just send out mailers, things like that. We always get one from a lender that does a postcard that has recipes, and we get one maybe like once every quarter, something like that, something fun, you know, that goes with the time of season it is. You know, we always get one in November, and she sends like pie recipes or something like that, which is just kind of fun. But then you start to see that name, and you recognize it, and you're like, oh yeah, this came, and maybe I'll use that as a lender. If you don't have a relationship, you know, but you can just always like target certain areas, and then if you stay within those areas, and then they start seeing your name, that can be really beneficial for some people. So. And then this is just what a farm, this is how I farm it, just on our system. You can just pull up, you can put in an address and then just pull up however many farms you want. So this list here, I can actually do in label format for you, but I can't print labels for you. I can just provide you with the label format for it. But if there are any certain areas that anyone would like, I'd be happy to help them with that. So
that's awesome. That's something that I've used too. And it's been a big help to just have those labels ready to go. So it's great on a new listing, or, you know, a property that just sold, or, you know, under contract, that you want to just kind of work that neighborhood. And a lot of times it's a neighborhood that's around where you live or around where you like to work.
yeah.
So, and it doesn't cost anything, right, to do that?
Yeah.
Nope.
Nope.
You know, another thing you guys can use this type of a list for, farming is one of it for prospecting and generating new leads, but there's a lot of ways to do that. Some of you are doing open houses, right? And you might want to notify the lenders, maybe, or not the lenders, the neighbors. So that's technically not, you're not farming the area, but you are doing a one-off for that event or whatever. And if you want to send a postcard, or at least get the names of all of the owners around there, that would be a good use of this type of a list. And so I think you should, we got several newer agents on here. Some of these things I think you should play with a little bit, you know, see if you find something that you really enjoy doing. Stephanie doing the legwork for you and handing you a list. All you got to do is be creative on how you touch those people, how you reach out to them, and you might find some success that way. So my opinion is experiment with it.
That's a good point. We talk about doing open houses for other agents too. This is a really great piece to add to it. You know, if you know you're going to do an open house 5 or 6 days in advance, you know, like on a Monday, and you ship these out on a, you know, Monday or Tuesday, just a postcard, even if it's just, you know, 50 or 100, it's not very expensive, and you're getting your name out there, and they will, and those neighbors that see your card on that open house, when you put signs right in front of their houses and the entrance to the neighborhood, they'll remember you again and say, oh yeah, I remember getting that postcard. Now you've made 2 touches with 1 postcard. It's pretty cool.
You know, the neighbors, sorry, just one more thing on that. The neighbors are always kind of curious what the inside of their neighbor's house looks like anyway. And some of them will just kind of come there, but it's a good opportunity to get face to face with those other owners and maybe forge a relationship. But one thing to consider is maybe if you split up your time and say neighbors only, 11 to noon, and then you do your other open house noon to 2 or whatever. But if you split it up and send them an invite saying, hey, it's just the neighbors, then that might be another way to make a connection where they can come through knowing that that was the whole point of that time slot for that. Just something to throw out there.
Well, I was just going to add that it seems like once one house goes up for sale and it sells quickly, it seems like more people in that neighborhood are opt to try and relocate or sell their home and just see what happens.
Yep, for sure.
Well, and I think for the newer agents, it's great to be able to have someone to brainstorm with. Stephanie has been a huge support for our EXP team. And I think you should feel comfortable reaching out to her and asking her about these things. It's nice to have someone you can feel comfortable with.
That's a good point. I mean, that's kind of why we share people that do such a good job in this format, right? So you guys can make some new relationships and contacts if you don't have that title person. They do a lot more than what you're talking about. This is the behind the scenes, what they do for you, but they're a resource. Stephanie is a resource. Stephanie is the person you call when you have questions so that you can represent your client the best possible, because your clients will bring up questions and you don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I have somebody on my team that handles all of those types of questions. Let me reach out to Stephanie. So,
I feel like we're always learning. There's always something new that comes up all the time.
Right.
You're like, oh my gosh, I've never dealt with that before. And so, no, thank you so much, Stephanie. This is
Of course. And if new agents, I mean, no question is a bother. Feel free. There's my cell phone number on there. You can text me. You can call me. I'm happy to help anyone that I can. So.
And then second opinions are great too. So if you have a question on a different report, call Stephanie. She'll be happy to do a second opinion on any questions that you might have. And I assume that you would do the the labels and the farming and notice of defaults for any of our agents that would like to have those, and even if they have relationships with other escrow officers, correct?
Oh, for sure. No, just
Awesome.
reach out to me.
Yeah. Thank you.
So on the timing of things too, guys, we talked a lot about buyers and protecting the buyers from previous liens on there, but I think we talked a little bit about the sellers, but when you get a new listing agreement, that day is when that listing agreement should be emailed to Stephanie right away. You've got a tight time frame for seller disclosures. Well, it takes a little bit of time to get that title commitment prepared for you. So typically you wouldn't say, hey, I've got a listing coming up. Can you do this for me? Because what if you don't actually secure that listing? And that's a lot of wasted work. But you're going to be just fine on timeframes if you get that signed. I mean, the first person that gets that is Stephanie, so she can start that research.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah. You don't like getting those calls the day before seller disclosures.
Hey, I need a PR today. It does happen.
Sure it does.
Not with our agents. They'll do it right.
I just tell Scott, hey Scott, can you hurry and search this for me real quick?
As long as it's not on Walker Lane or in that immediate vicinity, we'll think about it.
Well, Jeff and Lynn and I talk about all the time, our teams, we like have this, we have this goal that whenever we get something new under contract, that we get all of our information to the other agent before they get it to us, before they can ask it. It's like, okay, fire, go, go, go. And I'm always doing that too. So and one great thing about when you're working with other agents, buyers, sellers, I don't care who you're working with, it is so much easier to edify other people on your team, and that makes you look better. So when I say, My team is incredible. I have an amazing escrow officer. She takes care of everything. Her name's Stephanie. She's going to be calling you, reaching out to you, whatever she needs to get it to her as quick as possible. Or here's my lender, or my stager, all of those, my inspector, all those type of relationships. Whenever you're edifying how great your team is, it just it's true. It makes you look better because you have that experience and you're working with really good team members to help you do your job better. So take advantage of that, edify your team, and let others know how proud you are to work with who you're working with. And when they're doing a great job, it makes it a lot easier, and it makes your job easier too. I love it when I send things to Stephanie. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And we have relationships like that, not just in business, but in life, where you say, I'm requesting somebody to do something for me, and I send it off to them. And in the back of my mind, I might be thinking, I need to check on later to make sure that got done. Or I make a note, check up with that person to make sure that that gets done. My team, all the people I work with, I don't check on them. I know they're doing their job because they check on it with me before I would even, they let me know it's done before it's even time for me to check on it. So just really good to work with people like that. And thanks, Stephanie, so much for
yeah, of course. Thank you.
Today. Great job. Good information.
Thanks for having me.
I know you just kind of skimmed over the basics, and there's so much more that you could get in detail with. So thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Hey, anybody
Reach out if
else have any
anyone has
questions? Sorry to overtalk you, Steph. I don't want to
No,
make
you're
sure
good.
that everybody had an opportunity. Chime in, questions. Great job, Steph. Great info. You're a great resource. Open up your mics if you have any questions. Gonna log off, going once, going twice.
Steph, you must have done a good job.
No, that's good info. And you know what? We talk about this all the time because there is so much, right? I'm not picking on the newer agents, but there's just so much to know. And that's the value of a good team member. Eric just went over all of this, but you kind of need to know enough to know what you don't know, right? And then the most important thing is knowing who to call. So some of this could be confusing. It could be overwhelming, but you're not title people. Scott and Stephanie aren't, right? You have your job, do your job well, represent your clients the best you can, and surround yourself with team members that are going to do their job. Stephanie doesn't market your house to sell. That's your job, right? So just to that point, teams are everything.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions. Just wondering if the slides to this training will be available. And actually, yeah, there was a statement, not a question, but yeah, just wondering if the slides are going to be available for review.
Steph, I sent that to you. If you feel free to share that if you'd like.
Yep. I've got a list of everybody here. If you want that, I'll go ahead and put together an email and send that out to you.
Hey, Scott, thanks for jumping on with us too.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Appreciate you, giving us your time to educate yourselves and further your business. And we're going to be signing off here. Our next class is at 1:30. It's specifically our EXP brokerage model overview. We have a couple of new agents. I think they're going to be jumping on that call. So if you want to jump back on at 1:30, feel free to do that. We'll use this same link at 1:30.
Hey, Stephanie, before you go, I had one other question I was going to bring up. I know that you're local in South Jordan, but I don't even know all the locations you are available. So, I mean, do you work and do closings all over Utah or other places as well? How does that work?
So we're a national title company. So we can close in 36 states. But I do travel in Utah. No place is too far. Well, maybe St. George's, but local Utah County, Davis County, I'm happy to travel if someone can't come to a closing. That's no problem for me. Or if I'm unavailable, I can always send another escrow officer from the office or even a notary to do a signing.
Okay. Good deal. All right, Jeff, Stephanie, thank you. Scott,
Thank
appreciate
you.
all you guys.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank
Yep.
you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
See you
Thank
soon.
you.